Well, where do I even begin? Last year, I went on a whole turmoil. This is a story that I have been meaning to share, but I haven't really gotten the urge until this moment. Considering that we are in the Men's Mental Health Month, I have decided to open up about my experiences with mental health and just hoping that it reaches someone. And if there's someone going through whatever I have been through, then this is a moment to just, reflect, heal, and adjust. Hi, this is Casa. And last year was a whole difficult year for me. 2025 was a whole experience. And to understand 2025, we kind of have to go back to a while ago, a while before I really discovered myself and before I really got to the point of understanding what I was really going through. I was just a kid. I was just a normal kid, and I wasn't really a normal kid. My mom calls me a sensitive child. I have always been one to really take things deeply and, just being an empath and just trying to understand people deeply and trying to control so much around the world can really put weight on someone. And I didn't really understand myself being a kid. And so many kids used to pick on me. I remember in primary, my dad used to own these Nissan. And guys used to call it Ngurwe in our time, the Ngurwe. And kids in my school, in my primary school, will joke and tell me that my head nilikuwa na kichwa kubwa, like that Ngurwe. And yeah, I know such things and such comments go on around kids and everything, but being that kid and just being sensitive and taking things deeply, it really got to me. And growing up, I really was never really comfortable with how I looked, my appearances. And yeah, this went on for a long time. And getting into high school and going into a school where I studied with rich kids and like I had a whole different of experience, people from different places and walks of life. And, just people making a lot of comments about your appearance and how you look like. It really affects someone's self-esteem. And I would say my self-esteem was really affected. There was this point I really was considering doing plastic surgery. It's crazy. One of the things I really wanted the most was once I get my money, there were things that there was a whole list that I had written of things I wanted to change about myself. I was not comfortable with how I looked and, and this was just because of comments that were made by people, not certainly myself. So I started seeing myself in the image that people had made about me. And yeah, I wanted to change absolutely almost everything about myself because there was always a comment being made about my head, about my lips, about just different things that were with me and my body and my physique at the point. Another thing that was really concerning about my childhood was I was a little bit girly. I had like this kind of there were comments made about how I walked, about how I spoke, how I expressed myself, and they would joke around and saying that I was more of a girl. I remember even in high school there was a group of girls that were trying to help me, walk like a boy, behave like a boy, and do all these things and just try to be manly and masculine. And yeah, I did the best. I did whatever I could because in the society that I come from, it was kind of a weakness to be kind of femme. And I have never really considered myself feminine per se. It was just based on the comments that, I would receive from people and things that people will say to me. And yeah, and just in the journey of self-discovery and identifying and trying to, come to terms with sexuality and identity and just the things that were going on inside me that I had no absolute control of, I started to see myself very different. I despised myself. I absolutely hated the appearance. One thing I'm grateful for is I never got to a point of self-harm. The closest point I've gotten to self-harm was an experience that I've never really shared, but in the spirit of like, whatever I'm doing and just being true to myself, I'm going to share it. Uh, I had a friend in primary, and he was my best friend. We had moments. We had moments where we would hold hands. We would just, kind of be intimate with each other in a way, not like deeply full blown intimacy or whatever, but just moments of like, fragile, where we'll just like hold hands, hold fingers, and everything. And it really used to affect me after because, like, coming from a religious background, coming from a point where I did not understand much, and most of it was called sinful, and I saw myself as unclean after all these moments. I usually like ate herbs. Like, boy, I would go and pick these bitter herbs and like eat them and just try to like give myself sort of a punishment for, being so open and being so close to a boy. And this went on for a while, like most of my primary life until I got to high school where like, I met girls and like my experience in high school was a whole different one. I did a whole series on TikTok about it. But yeah, going through that kind of childhood and going through that kind of turmoil really played a big part in the adult that I became. Because now, after high school, I wanted to now experience life. I wanted to now, explore this other side of me. I had hidden so much of myself from my family. I had hidden so much of myself from my friends. And I was just doing a lot of things secretly. So I used to go to Facebook, and there was this guy I used to talk to on Facebook since I was in high school, somewhere along from three. He was, I think, 26 at the time. I was just like 16, like 10 years younger. And I would lie to him most of the time. When I was going to school, I would lie to him that, I was going to work somewhere. I was acting like as if I was 21 or something. But deep down, I know this guy knew my age, and he knew that I was a kid and naive, and I was just trying to discover who I was. So after high school, the first person or the first guy that I really met was this nigga. And yeah, he was staying somewhere in Lakisama. And meeting him for the first time, and after the experience we had, I hated myself. I really hated myself. At this point, I was just still not to terms with how I looked. I just still saw myself as, not really cool. I was like this mentality that had been instilled in me that I was not a very good looking gentleman. And yeah, so after meeting him, I remember blocking him everywhere. I blocked him on Facebook. I blocked him on WhatsApp. I blocked him everywhere because I never wanted to meet him again. Because I really understood, coming from the place I had come from and coming from the background I had been in, I really understood that this was something that I never wanted to do again. Because let's be honest, I was still in that mentality, and I just knew that, well, this was wrong. And yeah, I swore to myself that I'm never meeting him again, and I'm never meeting another man again, because I knew in my head that this is not the lifestyle that I wanted. But there's something about being yourself, and there's something that you cannot control, and there are certain things that you cannot change about yourself. And months later, I found myself gravitating back towards him because I didn't know any other person. And as I said, I had kept all this a secret. No one else knew about it except from me. And I knew that this was the only person that I wanted to be with, because for me, I am not promiscuous. I am not this kind of person who will just go with anyone. And at that time, I didn't know about any apps. I didn't know about any people. And yeah, I had a girlfriend at this time. I was seeing someone else. I was seeing a girl. And things were cool between us. And I really wanted to explore things with her and go further with her. But there were these certain moments where I also thought about, boys. And it really haunted me a lot. And it really took me back to this man that I met the first time after high school. And the second experience we had was kind of different, because going into this experience, I knew exactly what I wanted from it. The first experience I had was open-minded. I walked in not knowing what I wanted, not knowing who he was, and this was the first time we were actually meeting. We met at his house, and it was a small bed sitter, and whatever happened happened, and we got a bit intimate, and he kind of took advantage of me and my naiveness because at that moment I really didn't know much about what was going on with me. But this second experience was kind of different because now I knew exactly what I wanted and I knew exactly what I was going for. I unblocked him and I started chatting to him again, and he was like, "Oh, what happened? Nini?" And I lied to him again, and I just told him that I lost my phone and blah, blah, blah. And then, he agreed to meet me again. So going back, it was a push and pull this time because when we were going to get intimate, or when we were in that intimacy, I was like more of, there were things I was not comfortable with, and there were things that I wanted to see if he was okay doing it because, again, I was still exploring, and at the same time, I was just not so open to, some situation. So, he was kind of resistant, and he was kind of pushing back, and so there was a whole pullback, and so not much happened the second time. And after this second time is where I was like, I'm probably never going to meet him again because we did not align in that essence. So when I went back home, I cried. I remember I cried. I was like, if there was a way I would meet like-minded people, if there was a way I would meet friends like me, if there was a way I would try and meet people who understood my perspective, because the only people I had ever been with was my first best friend in primary. And at this point, we were not even talking like that. And I was not ready to start that conversation with him because we had gone through different high schools and we had gone through different experiences. And going back to him would just be sort of reliving a past that, I had moved away from. And this other guy who I didn't really like, I wasn't really attracted to, I wasn't really seeing him in that way. It was just a way for me to break through into this kind of door that I was exploring. And I was like, if there was a way I could meet people like me, if there was a way I could meet people who thought about, who took life as I thought, because now I was in campus and my friends in campus were very closed off, and the things that they spoke about, oh my God. You have to remember the society that I am from, and so many people have been brought up the way I was brought up, and so many people had different beliefs. Because, again, as an empath and as someone who sees the world in a kind of very open-minded way, I kept so much to myself because the friends that I was around with and the people I used to hang around with were so closed off in terms of sexuality, identity, and they used to make some comments that I would just keep quiet about, and they used to say a lot of things that I never really wanted to talk about. And at this point, I had not mentioned any of this to anyone except myself. So I started doing a little of research online and just started to, try and figure out how I can meet people like me until I stumbled upon this app. And on this app, I discovered that there was this whole new world that I didn't know about. And in this app, you will meet different people, especially men. And most of what was going on this app was sexual activity. You will just meet any random person from close range and you would go there. And the moment you just get there, it's all about sex and intimacy and all that kind of thing. And I remember being okay, as much as this is a freedom of sorts, this is a way I'm meeting people and all that, that is not what I really wanted, because at this point I was not looking for sex, I would say. It was just me looking for a connection and me looking for, someone who was like me. And I remember I met some few people. I met a couple of people because at this time I was like, just looking for a connection, looking for someone. And I had this behavior because like, if we don't align, I'm never speaking to you again. And if we don't match up, and if we don't meet the criteria, because most of the people, remember, were just looking for sex and were looking for intimacy. And I was not looking for that. And I feel like this is because of the community that we're in, and the community that, people have been through so much trauma, and people have been dealing with a lot of things that they kept as a baggage, and most of them use sex as a way of just, getting out of their head and all that. And it's a disease. It's like a toxic disease that I didn't want to be around. So I remember, like, this is the point where I broke up with my girlfriend at that time. And I was just like, things were not working out for us. And because I remember the thing that led me to this breakup was I knew this was not going to work, because at the end of the day, I was not very sincere with her. Actually, the thing that I really loved about the girl was she was open-minded. And she used to talk about, like, queer people, and like, she was so open about it. But I was so reserved because I didn't want to share who I was, and I didn't want to talk about it because maybe I was afraid that she would find out and I would uncover this mask. And yeah, so I remember our breakup was like, I just wanted to be honest with her, and I didn't want to keep seeing people while I was still with her, and it was just not going to work per se. Now, somewhere down the line, this is somewhere around in 2020, I met this person. So I remember around 2020, around the Corona time, I was at home and I met this person through the app. And they were not living far from where I was staying, from where my home is. It's like a 100 bob drive. It's like just less than an hour drive from my home. So I remember our first meeting, and I remember him taking me to where he stays. It was just like a small place, a decent place. And like, yeah, I was really humbled. I felt like we were building a connection. And yeah, we started vibing and the gel was good. But then the day after we met, the nigga was calling me and asking me for money, like, oh, his gas was not filled, or I don't know, his electricity bills. And at this point, I remember being like, okay, because I was interested in this person and I was like ready to help, and I was like, maybe this was a connection or something. So I offered myself to be helping, and like, yeah, it was just a thing. But then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I couldn't do this anymore. And then I was staying in Nairobi. I was in campus in KU. So like the distance again was still a big issue between us. And like, I never really wanted to get into anything serious because I knew like I had already had my fair share of experiences with people around the community. And I knew mostly it was just all about sex, money, and nothing serious. When it came to love and romance or connection and that, something like that, it was never that serious. So time goes by, I stopped talking to the guy, and like our connection is quite dimmer. So in 2021, while I was going back home for the Christmas holidays, I went on the app again. And then I matched up with this other guy. We're going to call him Dario. I matched up with this Dario guy. And for the moment, I was like very fascinated with his appearance. And just by our first meeting, I immediately knew that this was going to go somewhere. And like, because, yeah, I had been longing for a connection. I had been longing for someone to love me, and someone I could love, and someone I could die for, and all that kind of shenanigans. And I saw that this was the right fit. But now, this was the thing. When I went, actually, Dario was also living in just the same place the first guy was living. And I went to meet him. And I reached at the gate, and he tells me, oh, by the way, there's something I want to tell you. And I'm like taken aback for a moment. And I'm like, what is it you want to tell me? Because this is our first meetup, remember? And he tells me, there's someone in the house that knows you. And I'm like, what? And then he tells me it is now that other guy that I'd met earlier back in 2020. And I was like, bruh, oh my God, what is going on? And I was like feeling a little bit off because I was feeling like, oh my God, maybe this is a play. Maybe these two are playing me. And like, so he told me like, okay, you can take a minute if you can come inside. I would really love if you come inside. And I was like, okay, I'm going to come, but just give me a moment. So while I'm still there at the gate, I'm like, I call my cousin. There's my cousin Jill, who like I talked to about all the shenanigans. Though at this point, I had still not told her anything about my identity or whatever I stood for or anything of the sort. So I remember calling her and I was like, Code Red. And when it's Code Red, we're just going to speak. And when it's Code Red, we're just going to speak because she knows I want her to get me out of this situation. So we're like speaking. And this time when we're speaking, we're just speaking about the most random of things. I'm like figuring hesabu. I'm like calculating my next move. Do I go inside or do I leave? Because one thing is, I really wanted to go inside. I really wanted to meet this Dario guy because, let's face it, I wanted this connection and this was someone I really wanted to be with. In a way, I really wanted to get to know, not to be with, but to get to know. And at the same time, I didn't want to get inside because I didn't want to revive the other connection, the other guy, because we knew each other from before. And yes, we had some chemistry per se, but I really didn't want to open that chapter again. Because I remember he had texted me and I told him I was not even in town. So yeah, and maybe I was now getting to figure out that maybe he texted me because now when I matched up with Dario had probably shown him and he said he knew me. So like maybe he texted me to check if I was in town. And like I told him, no, I was not in town. So I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, in the middle of the call, I don't know what we talked about like the most random things, not even anything related to whatever was going on. I made up my mind and I was like, I'm going in. So yeah, I go in and the first meeting with Dario was good. And I didn't even care about this other guy because now this other guy was with some other guy. Yo. And remember, he was still texting me, this is the community that we're in, this is the society that we're in. So I remember the first meeting with Dario was cool. And everything started flowing really fast because remember I was like longing for a connection and yeah. And I just fell in love per se and things went so fast. I opened up a lot. I got so close to Dario and like this was the person I was waiting for a long time and I just got in it. Now, this other guy comes to my DM later after I go back home and everything. This other guy comes to my DMs and he's telling me all about now Dario. He's telling me how Dario has a wife, he has a kid, and all this, he has another person. And like, at this point, I'm like, okay, the connection was not that deep yet. And I was like, I'm still just going to find out anyway. And if I ask Dario about it, yeah, if he lies, cool. If he tells me the truth, cool. But I'm like, maybe this other guy is like just trying to tell me this so that he can put me off from Dario. Because remember, he really wanted to be with me. And the connection at that point was like faded. So, yeah, I remember asking Dario about the wife. And he told me, no, this is not my wife. They were not married. And that it's just their baby mama. And they co-parent. And yeah, I asked about the other guy. And he told me like there was no other guy and that they had broken up a while ago, like 3 months ago. And that, yeah, he was single and he was looking for someone. And yeah, and that's how we got into a relationship, per se. So I got back to Nairobi, and while I was back in Nairobi, things went well. I remember Dario came visiting, and the first fight we ever had was I saw a message from one of his friends. He had just gotten from Coast. And then I saw a message from one of his friends, and he had told him that he had broken up with a boyfriend. And at this moment, I know I am the boyfriend. You know what I'm saying? So I was kind of confused. And so I asked him, what does this message mean? And he was like very resistant to answer. And I was like, give me your phone so that I can check it. And he switched off his phone. And switching off his phone like made me so angry because I was like, damn, now I want to know. Now I want to know. Because at this moment, it had been like 3 months. I had been investing my feelings. I had been investing my emotions. I had been investing so much time in this. And I was like, I just needed to know. I had the right to know. And at this point, because I had started getting a little bit loud. And when I'm mad, I get so loud. I started getting a little bit loud. And he was like, he opened the phone and like showed me and the conversation. And he told me now he had broken up with the guy. He just now recently broken up with now that guy that I had been told about. We're going to call him Tonda. We're going to call him Tonda. So he had just broken up with Tonda and like, yeah. And I was like, then what have I been all this time? And he's telling me all these kind of shenanigans about, how he loves me and how he trusts me and how he loves Tonda and how he doesn't trust Tonda. And boy, I was like so done with this situation. Luckily, it was time for me it was around the time we were like, the semester was going, it was around the time the semester was ending and like, I had to go back home. So remember our home is around the same place. So we boarded the same bus and like along the way with the bus, he just kept telling me how he's sorry, how he wants to make things right and all that shenanigans. But at this point, I'm like so pissed off because I was like warned about this Tonda situation, but I never really took it serious. And now it was coming to bite me in the ass. Remember? So I was just like done with this situation. So yeah, I went home and like I was with family and like I just healed from this situation. And remember, like my self-esteem is still kind of low at this point, and I'm like, just kind of feeling like I'm not deserving of a lot and I'm not deserving of much. And like, remember like the experiences that I had with like the community and people I had met, they were not really good people and they were not really great people. And this was the person that I thought was a friend, was more than a friend, was someone I could rely on and trust, and had just stabbed me in the back. So yeah, what happened after that is he called me to a restaurant. He took me out and was like, he's made up his mind. He wants to leave home. He wants to move in with me, and that he had like realized and he doesn't want to lose me, and that he wants to be close to me, and that he's done with every other situation that Tonda. He was done with that situation and that he was serious about me. And I was like, okay. And me, I just never really took it serious. I was just like, he's going to say anything right now to just get himself out of this situation. But I was like, cool, good for you. Words don't mean much, actions do. So I went back to Nairobi and yeah, that evening, he calls me and he's like, I'm in Nairobi. Can I come over? And I remember being so like excited because I'm shocked and excited and shocked. And I was like, okay, he's done this for me. And I was like, these small gestures, because with me, it's more of like actions. If you just show me the actions, I will be obsessed. And there was the action. There was the step that I had been yearning for. And yeah, we got back together and like, now this was the point where now my friends, my campus friends and the people I was hanging out around started noticing a difference. Because now me and Dario would spend so much time together. We would hang out a lot. We would be like, in every meeting, in everywhere I went, I was with Dario. Everything I did, I was with Dario. And at this point, we were like so intoxicated. We were like drinking a lot. We were like partying a lot. We were like, it was just more of the connection had been built in more of the partying phase and the drinking phase and like intoxication majorly. And yeah, it was a good relationship, I would say, because like he really offered me everything I needed financially, emotionally. He was there, he was available, and all this time I was like rooting for it. Until this other one time where I go into his phone. I don't know what led me into that phone. I don't know. Because he'd passed out we had, on the one of the occasions, he'd passed out, and like I reached out to his phone, and I knew his passwords, and his passwords were just the same. And I like got into his WhatsApp and went to the archived messages, and now found a whole conversation with Tonda. The first conversation I found, by the way, was him and the best friend. They were talking about a breakup with Tonda, right? But now this one was on the archive, and it was just a whole conversation about from him and Tonda. And this is where my mind blew up, because remember, this guy had told me he'd moved into the city with me for me and, to start a life with me and all that shenanigans. But now here I discover he's been in a 3 fucking year relationship with Tonda, and they were still together at this point. And I was mentioned in the conversation because Tonda had severally asked about me, Casper. And he told him I was a cousin. Yeah. Now I was furious. I was infuriated, but I was like, chill. We don't want to cause so much drama. We don't want to cause attention. I screenshotted the conversations, some of the conversation, not all of the conversation, because it was a lot, and said it to myself. And yeah, I just sat there. So he woke up the next morning and he went to the living room, and I was still in the bedroom. And he texted me. He's like, he deleted the screenshots that I had sent from his phone, because I sent the screenshots from his phone to mine. He deleted them, but I had already put them in my safety basket. And he kind of telling me that, what did you see, Nini Nini? And I'm like, I saw it all. He can't even defend himself at this moment. And I remember this is the most silliest and desperate action I had ever done. I texted Tonda, and I was like, what is going on? Do you know this guy? And told me everything about it. And now me and Tonda agreed to meet up. And we did meet up. And he was present in this meeting. Dario was present in this meeting. And we all confronted him. And he was like, he loves me and trusts me. And he was like, he loves Tonda, but doesn't trust Tonda. And I was like, okay, cool. Naive enough. After this meeting, we got back together. Now we were in a 3-way relationship. Me, him, Dario, and Tonda. Does that really make sense? Well, it did make sense for me. I remember at this point, I was at my lowest. Because remember, again, I am not this promiscuous person. I was not this person who's gonna be there everywhere and everything. And I was so low, because I used to feel like I could not meet anyone better than this one. Because I had been with other people, and I had seen how this community is toxic and all. And I was I used to feel like I was not deserving of anything better. I used to feel like I didn't want to go around meeting other people, because, well, I was this one was the one who had accepted me. This one was the one who had been there for me. I had a best friend in campus. We're going to call him B. And I remember even when I found the messages from Tonda, I was broken. I was brutally broken. And I just called B, and I was like, hey B, can we meet? And I remember meeting up with B, and I was emotional and everything. And B was like, what's wrong? And I was just I'm okay, just some sad news I've had. And I'd never really shared anything to him. But he kind of read between it. He kind of knew something was off with me. But yeah, the thing I like about B was he was always there for me. He would always root out for me. He was always standing up for me. And yeah, so I remember now when we got into this 3-way relationship with me, Tonda, and Dario, it was a whole confusion, because there were days he would spend with me, and there were days he would go and spend with Tonda, and oh my God, I just couldn't take it anymore. I went home for a break. And at this point when I was going home, I was I don't want to be involved in this 3-way anymore. And I was just done, because I was feeling it was overwhelming me. And I was I had gone so low, I had sunk so low. And this is, I think, this was my awakening, maybe, the moment I started to like discover myself. Because now, when I went back home, I was like, I'm gonna show this nigga what he's been missing all this time. And I was like, starting to like, put myself together, boost my confidence, dress nicely, take pictures, be on the gram, do whatever, just to show him that I was doing fine without him. And I remember him calling me, and it was like, he really wanted to be serious with me. He really wanted to take things to a good level. He was willing to do anything so that he can just be with me and all that shenanigans. And I was like, well, there was just one condition. If you want to be with me, then you can't be with Tonda, right? And like, yeah, he was like, cool, yeah. So at this point, I went to Nyeri for a workshop. And at this time I was in Nyeri for a workshop. Remember, this guy was so intoxicated. He used to get intoxicated a lot. And I remember one time he calls me and is like, can I tell you something? I'm like, what do you want to tell me? And he tells me that he and my best friend, B, had gotten intimate. Boy. Remember, B doesn't know anything about me or my identity. Okay, not that he doesn't know per se. I haven't told him anything. So he's like, yo, I was shocked. I was really shocked. And anyway, I just took it with a pinch of salt because I was like, he told me. And one thing I was like, again with this. And I was like, I didn't even know how I was going to handle it. And I didn't even know what to do per se. Yes, he had been honest with me and he had told me about it. But I was like, well, this is the game you want to play? I am good at it. So I remember getting out from Nyeri. I was like, remember, I was getting into myself. I was getting into my shell. I was trying to discover who I was and like everything. And I was like, you know what? You're not the only one who can be with other people. I can also do the same. And now I started meeting other people. I started vibing with other people. And like, it used to piss him off. And I used to like it. I used to like it because I will say I didn't used to meet people for sex or anything because again, I'm a demisexual. Before I have sex with anyone or before I get intimate with anyone, I have to love them. I have to be connected to them. I have to, get to really vibe with them. And for me, it was more of like just looking for connections. And like I really met good people at this time. And it used to piss him off. It used to really piss him off. And I used to love when it pisses him off because I would just deliberately leave evidence there. So yeah, this went on for a minute. And like our relationship became toxic in that essence. It was more of like hurt people. So I would hurt him and he would hurt me back. Hurt him and it would hurt him back. And it just became again because at the same time, I was so rooted to him. Maybe because I felt like I had opened up so much of myself to him. And I didn't want to just leave him like that. And at the same time, I don't know what he wanted from me. I don't know what he was gaming at. Because like, it was just always a game with him. It was always just trying to make me feel some type of way, trying to make me feel hurt. It just became this way for years, for on and on. And even at the time when I started habiting with my siblings, like there was a point I lived with my brother and sister, and he lived with us. You know what I'm saying? And I was open about it. I was like, it was my friend. That's all I said. But like, I think my sister didn't really know much, but I think my brother kind of read it and was like, this was just more than a friendship because we would fight a lot. And whenever we fought, he would go and pull my siblings to a meeting and would be like trying to tell them that, and would be like trying to make them go against me. And I feel like that was kind of some dumb shit to do, to be honest. But, well, I just was like, you know what? That had gone on for so long. And I remember the biggest explosion we had was like So there was this other time I found out that he was seeing someone else. And like, I was so pissed off and I was like, I also met someone else. And like, we went out to drink to a club and like, we're chilling. And then he came out of nowhere. I don't know how he got hand of this. He came and then he started like confronting me. And it was a back and forth conversation. It was like, now there is where everything exploded. My anger, my emotions. And I just started ranting. And I called him out and I told him to piss off, and I just told him I wanted nothing to do with him. And like, I got so angry because I was so exhausted. I had like wasted all my energy on this person. So Daddy goes back to the house and is like starting to pack my things. He's packing my things. He's packing all the things that I had bought. And my brother calls me and is like, yo, why is Daddy packing your things? Why is he carrying your things? And I go back to the house and the date I was with, I told him, hey guy, can you take me to my house, because I hear this guy is packing my things and I know how he gets. He gets so agitated. And then we went back to the house with this guy. And like, when we get to the house now, Daddy gets so infuriated. And it's all a thing because I locked the door. Because I was like, he's taking my things out of the house. So he starts yelling, he starts shouting, he starts like throwing punches. And I'm like, bro, everything just escalated so fast. My brother ran out, and it was just a whole thing. And like, yo. So I was like, he held me and he was like violent with me, and he was like, it was just a whole shenanigans. And so this dad that I was with stepped in and he was like trying to hold him, and then I ran out of the house and then locked the door from outside. And he was like so agitated. He started punching the walls, he started punching the windows, he started punching, it broke almost every glass. And it was an apartment where so many people were living. Everybody got out of the apartment and they were like standing outside there and they were just watching and witnessing. I'm outside trembling, shaking, I'm with my earrings. I'm like, oh. At this point I was like, I have to go to the police. I didn't want to do this, but it has just caused a whole facade. He's broken all the windows. He's just done a whole thing because he's now jealous and angry and, ranting out. So I go to the police, and then the police come and pick him up, and then they take him to the station. That's how we broke up. And the story doesn't end from there, because now I took a solid 6 months of figuring out my life and a 6 months of like getting to a point where I was like comfortable in my existence. Because over time I started working on myself. I had graduated, I had gotten a job, I was doing much better, and I was at this position where I was safe. I felt like I was doing so well in my life. And yeah, things were working out for me. And this was now walking into last year where everything went loose now. As much as I was doing the exterior work, because most of this was the exterior work, was me trying to, look good, look fit, be decent, buy new clothes, buy fit things, and I was doing mostly the outer work. The inner work I had not done, because there were inner wounds, there were childhood wounds, there were all these other things that were inside that I had not done, I had not dealt with. And this is the point where I was like, I had tried to move on. I had tried to meet other people. I had tried to go on with my life and everything, but something in me just kept calling back to Dario. Something in me just kept running back to him, because I don't know, because of the inner wounds I was talking about, of those things that I was so scared to share with anyone, because of those other things that, everyone knew him at this point, because after the whole fight we had, my family knew everything. He had called my mother. He had already exposed me. He had already outed me, per se. And I was like, what do I do right now? What do I do? I can choose the high road of going on with my life. And that had not really worked out really well for me, because I still thought about him every day. Or I can choose the other road of forgiveness. And I did forgive him. I brought him back to my life. But I brought him back to my life with a caution mind. Because deep down I knew he also had his wounds. He also had things he was struggling with. He also had things he had not dealt with. because first things first, his sexuality was a big thing for him. His sexual identity, he never really had resolved it, and he was still struggling with all that because even in public, he was always cautious about, saying, touching my hand or anything. But now this second time when he came back to my life, because I had taken a whole long time away from him, he came back with like a different kind of emotion. Like he was more open to showing the world how he loved me or how he cared about me. I don't know if it was a performance. I don't know what it was, but he was like always there rooting for me. He was always there involved in my career. He was always there with my friends. He just wanted to be so much involved in everything. And in all this, he was like too loving and too caring and too all that. And for me, I was like, this was not the Dario I knew, because now these were two different versions of the same person. The first one that I was rooting back to was the toxicity, the push and pull. And then this second one was like, not toxic, and the toxicity was now from my side. I remember I kept pushing him to the edge because I kept feeling like he was putting on a mask and he was trying to like be someone he was not. And I remember all this time I was just pushing him to the edge so that I could see his reaction, so that I could see what he could do. I remember like at this time I was working on a script. I was working on a script that was called Intoxicated. And Intoxicated was about my love life. And funny enough is I did not write it in the direct sense that it was. I did not write it in the direct vision that it was, or directly visually, because of course my love life is messy per se. But I wrote it in a different kind of way, and it started out as a marketing strategy. I was all about, I'm gonna go online and I'm gonna market my movie in a very crazy way that is gonna make people wanna know what is going on. And I had this ginger bottle that I used to record this video of like me just, having fun and like acting all lunatic and everything. It really got to a point now people were concerned about it, and I didn't understand, and I'm still not understand. You know how things happen in a very spiritual way? That is how it all happened, by the way. Because for me, I just thought this was something normal. I just thought this was a way of me marketing, or a way of me showing the world that there's something special coming and there's this special thing coming. Because remember, Intoxicated had been drawn from my personal experience, from what I had been going through, these past experiences with this relationship with Dario. And remember, at this time, I am back with Dario. We're not back in a relationship, but we are back in a, what do I call it? A situationship per se. We're like close because he's like a friend. It was a friend, not in a relationship, because I had practically put it clear that we're not in a relationship. And he knew we're not in a relationship. And what I was doing at this, because I had done my intensive workout, I had done my intensive dealing with putting that away from me. But they say, you know what they say, you should not be friends with your exes. That's what exactly happened in this situation. Because then he had feelings for me. His feelings for me were still there. And my feelings were not that it disappeared. They were still there. But it was just in that, like, I knew my boundaries because I knew the kind of person I was dealing with. And so, yeah, as I started doing this marketing for my film, at this point, I was recording a video. I was recording this clip of anxiety.
You're trying me.
I'm not trying you. Nakwambia tu ukweli. Sijekuwa boyfriend wako. Kuanzia 2022. You have been chatting with people, we have been meeting people. Ujai uambia. Paka sasa hivi ile ukweli imekuja kujulikana. Anxiety, keep on trying me.
was doing this anxiety video. And then he storms in. I don't know what information he had gotten outside there. He storms in into the house. And I'm doing my recording, remember? My camera is on. I am in the middle of a recording. And then he starts ranting out. How we have been in a relationship for 3 years. How I've never really told anyone. How, blah, 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 blah. And like, bruh. The moment I turned back, I was like, okay. I cut the recording. And then we got into a whole fight. We got into a whole conversation. And I went back and rewatched the clip. And I was like, bruh, this is content. This is solid content. Because it was so raw. It was so true. It was like, this was everything. This was like everything that was going to draw people into this movie, because this is exactly what Intoxicated is about. You know what I'm saying? And like, I was like, I called him because after this fight, he went over to his sister's place. And then I called him and I was like, there's a video I want to share with you. And I want to upload it. I want your honest opinion about it. Because it doesn't have your face. It just has your voice. But it can be anyone's voice. We can say it was anyone's voice. But the image was me, because I was on the image. And as much as this video was gonna like put me out there in the world, I was at the point where I didn't really care. And remember, that's what I'm telling you, everything just moved in a spiritual kind of way. I don't know what happened. So while he tells me, it's okay, you can upload it. So I uploaded this video. And it caused an explosion. Do you know when I say an explosion? It blew up. Like, everyone was calling me. Everyone was texting me. They were like, what is going on? Shebang, 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 shebang. People are commenting. People are talking. People are like moving fast. And I remember this time I was like so exhausted because like even during the production phase for my movie, something that really bothered me during the production phase was how my crew and cast and some of my friends were talking behind my back. Because like, I'm a hard worker and I had put so much into making this movie and into getting finances and into getting to produce this movie. And all that people could think about, or all what people could say was like, the person who's funded this production is probably screwing someone richer. And I remember this coming from my DOP, because my DOP at that time was, I will get into another, if I start talking about my DOP, we'll get into another conversation, but I remember him saying, the person who has funded this production was definitely screwing someone, must have been definitely screwed to get these funds, because you can't just get these funds. And remember, I had really toiled and worked my ass off to get myself to this point. And all my life, I had been working so much, I had been putting so much, and like, to get to this point, I was like exhausted. And even releasing this bomb that I knew exactly it's gonna be a bomb. I didn't think it was gonna be an explosion like that, but I knew it was gonna be a bomb. Releasing it, I was like exhausted. I was tired. And I remember even uploading it, when I just pressed the upload button, something in me just shifted. And it was like, this one was gonna change me in a way, which it did. And from that moment, things took a whole spiral. Because now, tell me why I was being called home for a family meeting. Tell me why all my friends and like everyone is like calling me and like concerned, and like people are telling me how much of chaos and how much drama and whatever I've done. And like, no one really wanted to know why. No one really wanted to know the story behind my emotion, my frustration. No one really wanted to know how much I had been holding inside and how much pain. It was just all about, take the video down. It was just all about, are you losing your mind? It was all about, you have really lost it. And I was like, you think I've lost it? Now I'm going to show you that I've lost it. And now it became a whole spiral. because now I started doing more videos of like showing that I have really lost it. Because deep down, maybe I know I have not lost it. I'm like, when I look in the mirror and when I write in my journal and when I affirm myself and when I'm like, I am okay. I feel like I'm okay and everything for me is okay. But like, when I'm doing these videos, I am in a kind of energy, in a kind of synchrony with like some higher self. I didn't understand it. I don't understand it. I really can't put my hands around it. But I'm like, I released some unresolved trauma. Like I wasn't even comfortable talking about it like this because I would cry. I would like break down. I would like, but right now I'm like so freer. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, that moment was so hard for me because like I was so alone. Like everybody that I thought cared and the people that really I thought cared for me were just gone like that. And like no one was associating with me per se. And I remember when I talked with my mom told me it's not about my sexuality. It was not about that because for some reason she kind of knew it. She kind of knew about it. What was more concerning was the video. That video that I was uploaded the first time. And to her, it was more about what was being said about me, what her friends were saying, what the messages they were sending to her. And like, for me, it was more about like, no one really cared to know what I was going through. No one really cared to know where these wounds were coming from. And these wounds were not coming from the videos, you know. The videos were a rebellion. The videos were a fight for survival because this was me doing the inner work. This was me removing the mask. This was me covering all those years of pain, of torture, of self-hate, of like, yeah, I was seeing everything ugly in me. I was seeing the monster. I was seeing the heart. I was seeing it all, and I was seeing it all in 3D. And I was like, so content. And till now, I feel like that really brought me peace. That really brought me some calmness that I do not really can put it in words. Because that self-hate, that anger, that feeling like I'm not good enough, that feeling like I'm not cute enough, that feeling like I cannot get any better, do not deserve any better, left with those videos. And for me, it's always about a reflection. What you see is what you reflect. How you think is what you reflect. Everything they saw and everything you judge about those videos was not about the video. Because you're seeing a madman. You're seeing someone who's gone crazy. But what I'm seeing is healing. I'm seeing, bro. Because when I was doing them, it was just purely from marketing my film. And the first video that I uploaded was like, there was this side of me that I was so scared of showing the world. There was this toxicity, there was this thing that I had been in that no one really knew. And me trying to explain it was like, I couldn't even explain it. And showing it, putting it into light was like everything. And something I can really say is Dario made it quite easy for me, you know. And some of the videos, he was holding the camera, he was behind the camera, and the reflections, the imagery, that is something that many people, I will say, the reflection, the imagery, that is something that many people go through with inside. Like there's so much toxicity in this society, in this generation that we are in. There's so much that people are going through that they can't show, they can't relieve, and like it's always in the inside. It's always taking it in the inside, and like people don't do the inner work. People People stay in commitments, people stay in relationships because, well, they feel like they're not deserving of anything better. And the thing is, they do not see it. You cannot see it until you actually see a reflection of yourself, until you actually see the truth in you, until you actually see yourself going through the hurt, the pain. Then that's the only way you can really, really, really relive from it. And yeah, I'm really going to be grateful for my family because I really come from a very understanding family. My nuclear family, my paps, my mom, my siblings, they really held me down. They were really there for me. And I remember just going through my mom getting me a therapist, and like I went through therapy. The problem with me was like the inner child, the inner child that had suffered, the inner child that had gone through so much hurt, that had gone through so much pain that I had not shared, that I had kept a secret. And like something about secrets is they will always come to light. Like, what's the feature mimba? You cannot hide a pregnancy. It will always come to light, you know, and secrets work in the same way. No matter how much you try to hide, no matter how much you try to keep it confined, it will always find its way to the light. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I am not ashamed of what I've been through. I am not ashamed of any of it. In fact, I am proud. I am proud of being a survivor of the system. I am proud of breaking the barriers. I am proud of doing the inner work and getting myself to a point where I can stand confidently, I can speak confidently, and I can, really analyze this situation with a smile because, well, it was not an easy journey. The pain, the hurt, the torture was majorly from the society, but some of it was also inflicted. And you get to a point where you realize that you can be free. Freedom is not easy. Freedom is a battle. You have to fight for it. And when you attain it, you will keep it at all its cost. Because now I am happy, I am calm, and I am proud to be Casa.